Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Common Sense by Eric Foster, co founder of the Future Today and Tomorrow Super PAC. I'm doing this on Zoom, so the video looks a little grainy. I tried to adjust the aspect ratio and those other factors. Not the most savvy and skilled when it comes to this, but I try to do what I can. So, in today's video, I wanted to talk about once again, making truth simple again and responding to the lies in real time. And so the particular lies that I wanted to address was something that I saw in a interview on the weekend show on MSNBC with a Oklahoma representative, Gabe Woolley, who was there to defend PragerU. Now, PragerU, and I had the actual opportunity back in the mid 2000s to do a couple of radio shows with Dennis Prager. Nice man, thought that the thought process that he had was not something that was consistent with what the majority of people would think, but I digress. His company has a sanitized, white, benevolent savior view of history that's not based in fact. It's based in fantasy, it's based in emotion, and it's based in perpetuating a false narrative. And every once in a while, there's a little bit of truth in it. But when Representative Woolley came on the show yesterday, the panelists were interviewing him, and there were a number of opportunities in which they tended to let him go with respect to unfiltered lies and painting the picture of his view of education and what they're doing in Oklahoma is education based on common sense and fact versus education in non-MAGA states, which he called based on emotion and indoctrination and ideology. Now, what's interesting is Antonia Hilton did ask him the question of is his educational system and his defense of the MAGA conservative view on history something that would be considered indoctrination? And he deflected, kind of said no, but really deflected. But what I wanted to do today was I wanted to share a couple of clips and provide some commentary and feedback, things that I think when we in the non-MAGA pro-democracy side have the opportunity to be in these interviews, what we can do to better respond to the lie and bring the truth out, exhale the truth, and make sure that it is consistent, it's through, and it's clear. So I'm going to share the screen that I have because I want to, in doing this, give you all the ability to see what I am seeing. Okay. So as you can see, this is YouTube. And this is where I'm going to go to the particular piece. And so they started off with one of the segments in their videos regarding the PragerU history lesson on slavery. So I'm going to tee it up from that particular point, and then we can start from there. All right. Okay, so I'm going to stop it here because I like the premise of where they're starting. Now, I would have liked for them to have played the rest of the clip because the fake Christopher Columbus went further in validation that it's not really as bad as you think, slavery. And, the people who are slaves did have some benefits in being slaves versus what might have been taking place in their homelands or in conflict situations. So it got a lot worse. And I wish they would have played that, but that's where they started off. And so when they asked him about that in terms of, do they think that that's an accurate portrayal of history? Here is the response that he gave. This is at the 2 minute and 3 second mark of the interview. Okay. So, what he's saying here is that he doesn't have necessarily an issue with the phrasing that slavery was better than death, the small segment that they played in the video. And then he's giving his perspective on context. Now, to me, this is where the beginning of missed opportunities took place, because as he went further in his defense of this bullshit, listen to some of the response and some of the questions and how the response from Antonia, Charles Coleman, I believe, Amy Mohadine, and Elise Jordan went forward in this particular clip. Okay, this is good, but I'll tell you my thoughts in a minute. I'm sorry. Good background. All right. So I'm going to stop here because right now, at this particular point, Representative Woolley is lying. In Oklahoma, this bullshit is required in their social studies, history, and civics related classes. So the content that's coming from PragerU, this fake view of actual historical facts and views, is being purported. And did you hear the fact of when Antonia asked him, well, why are you not using information that could come from sources that include people who were slaves, who were able to tell their actual accounts of the torture and the brutality of slavery in America and in other parts of the world? He pivots to, well, this is just an option. It's not just an option, it is required in the Oklahoma school district. So But I think that Antonia could have went a little bit more direct in terms of saying to him, why would you use material that is promoting a lie about slavery in regards to slavery being okay when it's not? And you have access to information that can communicate. Now, see, I think that's a better way of putting it, because then when you get into the framing of other scholars and institutions that they could rely on, the MAGA reflex is anything that's not MAGA approved is bad. We can't take it in. So you kind of have to play a little bit of a rhetorical strategy in dealing with them. So let's kind of keep going on, because I really think that this really is interesting, but I think it's also important from a making truth simple again vantage point of how do we respond to the lies and the indoctrination and disinformation. This man seems like he might be a nice human being, but he is speaking in the same sort of terms that were the terms that were used in public education as Germany transferred from the Weimar Republic to the Nazi rule, or in current Russia under Putin. Good. This is good. I'm going to give Eamon a tremendous amount of credit because he actually went there, which is something that too many of the journalists today do not do. What Oklahoma is doing and these MAGA states are doing are implementing an actual indoctrination education model, where from screening the teachers who are teaching to see if they align with the MAGA ideology, to the content, the materials, the teaching methods, the testing, everything is structured to indoctrinate this false reality. It's like they're trying to indoctrinate everybody into the Fantastic, well, I'm not even going to say the Fantastic Four 828 universe. I'm going to actually say it's probably the 10,005 X-Men universe, because in that universe, the where the Fantastic Four, at least one version of the Fantastic Four were in, along with the X-Men, that universe has a whole lot of, excuse me for scratching my nose, has a whole lot of hate built into the universe, a whole lot of disinformation and lies built in. So they're trying to indoctrinate that universe and that system of education into what the parents and students in their state are getting. Eamon actually posed that properly in terms of this is not something that is scientific. This is not something that is historically accurate. And it is actual political indoctrination. It's mega indoctrination. Now, watch what Representative Woolley said in response to, I believe, a serious question. Okay, come on. Okay. All right. I'm not sure what's going on in terms of why it didn't freeze, but so hear him. So the first thing he said is true. Christopher Columbus is a historical figure. Now, there's no actual evidence that Christopher Columbus was ever interviewed or wrote on his views on slavery or the treatment or mistreatment of native individuals to one of the lands where he landed, or to people from Africa, or to people from Asia. So we don't know. So he's a historical figure, but in the context of this Prager educational curriculum crap, it's not accurate what Christopher Columbus is saying. But then he gets into the framing of saying that what he's doing is that, one, this video said that there was atrocities with slavery. That's not what it says. Even in the short clip that was played, it doesn't say that. Someone on the panel should have interrupted and immediately said, nope, that is not said in this video. There is no condemning of the atrocities. There's basically a whitewashing of the atrocities and saying, well, it happened, it happened everywhere, no big deal, which is bullshit. But also, it didn't happen everywhere, and it damn sure didn't happen in the way that the United States did slavery. So that's another lie. But then he gets into appropriate and inappropriate content. And he speaks to this bullshit being appropriate content, this MAGA fascist indoctrination educational curriculum as proper. But there's something like the 1619 project as improper. So I'm going to, because I think what might be throwing us off is, nope, oh, good Lord. I'm going to stop sharing for a second, because what I think might be throwing us off is I have the internet up. So I'm going to close that if it allows me to, which should make this all work a lot more quicker and effective. Okay, good. I'm sorry, bear with me, technical difficulties. So let me go ahead and share again. And let me get right back into, okay. So I'm going to hit play again, because then he gives an interesting line of garbage regarding what is happening in non-MAGA states in regards to public education, talking about first the 1619 project. Let's see if it works. Okay. All right. This is where interruption needs to happen, because here's what he's saying. First off, he's saying people categorize Prager as far right. Dennis Prager fucking categorizes himself as far right. So ultimately, Dennis Prager is cataloging himself exactly as he is. This isn't something where someone is misappropriating the way that his educational curriculum is and what the ideology is behind it to Representative Woolley lies and says that what he's teaching from Prager is historically accurate. Somebody on that panel should have said, that's not historically accurate. That's a lie. And Dennis Prager, as Antonia said earlier, has called himself conservative, has not hid the fact that he is a far right MAGA conservative. So that's where you immediately go back to and push back to the representative's words. You don't let the lie go like it's credible. You've got to interrupt the lie because the lie is not credible. Prager is a biased curriculum content provider, and the representative is not actually teaching accurate history. He's teaching bullshit history. He's teaching indoctrination, something Antonia Hilton mentioned earlier and Eamon Mohadeen mentioned earlier and needs to be continually mentioned. And then lastly, he talks about in his belief that what is so-called far right is logical reasoning, and then he's going to get in and say that versus emotional arguments, that somewhere that something is twisted and changed to fit someone's emotion, and because they feel uncomfortable with something, that's actually what the fuck Prager is. Excuse my profanity a little bit that I'm mixing in here, but that's actually what Prager is. He's describing Prager is, and this content that's required in Oklahoma, in Arkansas, in Louisiana, and in a number of other MAGA occupied states. They are force feeding this indoctrination education down the throats of parents and students. Not all the parents and students are MAGA parents, and that's the other thing. Gabe, as you get further in, has no understanding and interest in parents who aren't MAGA parents. No consideration for the fact that as a parent, you don't have to be MAGA to be a good, informed, engaged parent. And as being not MAGA, you can love your kids, but want your kids and your views to be respected and not indoctrinated or forced to basically hide and cover up your feelings, cover up your beliefs. Everything that MAGA is doing and PragerU is doing is an emotional argument. And it is twisted, as you can see on the screen, it is twisted because they're not comfortable with the truth, not our side. All right. Okay. So I understand where Eamon is going, but guys, if you're in a situation where you're having a conversation, an interview, a debate on the floor in your legislative body with a person like this, you can't get wonky. And so, Eamon's question, are parents aware that you're teaching something that's not peer reviewed? That's wonky. Here's what a better way of handling that would have been. Rep Woolley, not every parent in the classroom is a MAGA parent. For those parents who aren't MAGA parents and see this as false history and don't agree with this being taught in the classroom, what are your thoughts and views towards them? That's the better way to frame the question. because it's really a parent dynamic. Non-MAGA parents are not going to want their kids to be force-fed MAGA garbage. Some MAGA parents might not want it as well, but the definitely non-MAGA parents, I'm going to say 95% with a 5% margin of error, are going to say, I don't want that garbage taught to my kids or have to help them with studying on that sort of lies and BS. So, and then also, so you don't get wonky. Keep it simple and keep it relatable. Are you okay? Are the non-MAGA parents in your classroom okay with your indoctrination? Yeah, this is on YouTube. This is where, if I was one of the panelists, I would have said, like the superintendent Walters had pornography in one of the meetings with some of the state board of education members. But I digress, because yes, sometimes on YouTube you can pull up pornography. Actually, you can't. It's bullshit. But here we go. Here's a problem question. Okay. When I watch this video, and like I say, you can catch it on, if you subscribe to the MSNBC YouTube channel, as I've subscribed to, you can catch really great segments like this. And so when I saw this, I said, okay, this is not the appropriate type of question for this situation. One, it's a wonky question. Elise's question regarding, is this the best use of funds to buy this educational curriculum and implement it in the schools? And how does it correlate with test scores and understanding of things like math and science? I I understand and support the premise of where she's at, but that's a question better served with someone who's not down this rabbit hole, because there's nothing of value you can get out of asking him that question and trying to get an answer, as you'll see what his answer is, which is complete hot garbage. So let me finish up. But I understand what she's trying to do, but I think this was another wasted opportunity to dig back into, how are the non-MAGA parents, how are the African American and Native American, Hispanic American, and Asian American parents in the schools who have had a lineage of governmental mistreatment through slavery, the forced land repatriation and extermination of indigenous Native Americans, the various atrocities from KKK and other efforts, the driving out campaign in Northwest and Western United States from the mid to late 1800s to the early 1900s, the Mexican terrorist campaigns waged by the Mexican American terrorism campaign waged by the Texas Rangers, the law enforcement agency, for almost 20 years, where close to 5,000 Mexican Americans were murdered, a large number of them lynched, and the Mexican Repatriation Act of 1930, which forced almost 2 million Mexican American citizens out of the country as a response to the Great Depression, and on and on. So I think it's better, and I know I'm kind of all over the map, but I think it's better to drill back to that as a core issue in terms of how do you show this to those parents who will probably have an objection to it and reconcile that they have the right to have an objection. That's better than her question. Okay, I just got to say it again. It's not impressive. Okay, that's a horrible way of dealing with this as a particular line of question and issue. And like I say, I understand why, but this is not the way to have this discussion because it comes off, even though Elise is a Southern Belle, it comes off as the MAGA lie of Northern elite in terms of a question. Impressive, those sorts of terms engender a thought process of highbrow elite looking down upon. So it's not a good look, but let's hear his response. Okay, once again, here's where you interject because he's on a riff of bullshit. Oklahoma, yes, is a majority voting MAGA state, but it is not a 100% MAGA state. Anywhere from 30 to 39% of the voters who show up in general elections are non MAGA voters. And a majority of those are parents. So for those parents, what the fuck, Gabe? What the hell? Do those parents matter? Because you're saying that what is being infiltrated, you're infiltrating fake information, lies about history because you're the majority with no regards to other parents in your state. Now, I know your state superintendent, pretty much his feeling is if you're a parent and you don't like this, leave Oklahoma. That's really a fucked up way of thinking about things. That's really bad in terms of looking at people and saying that, well, if you don't agree with our indoctrination ideology where we're infiltrating Gabe, infiltrating bad information, MAGA biased information, and calling that history, calling that accurate, then just leave the state. Now, you're not saying that, but you are leaning on the voting majority as a cudgel to say we have the right to indoctrinate based on the fact that we're the voting majority. Yeah, I agree with him on the internet in general. This is the best section of the interview. This was the best freaking response. Antonia Hilton needs to be bubble wrapped and protected at all costs because she knew the assignment. Kind of at this point, she's taking the gloves off and saying, F this, I'm going there. You all are instituting a teacher certification system that requires teachers to be indoctrination certified teachers, where the teachers don't have the ability to teach content based on the content and all of the inputs into that content. It has to be a strict MAGA, fascist, dictatorship, conservative. It's not even conservative, but a MAGA, fascist, dictatorship education program. And the teachers can't get certification in Oklahoma unless they adhere to the dear leader and the dear leader's view of education, similar to what the MAGA leader Trump is doing with the Smithsonian. The man who knows nothing about history wants history to align to his views. So I guess the Smithsonian will now have a history exhibit on the airports during the Civil War, I mean, during the Revolutionary War, because remember, he talked about the revolutionaries, George Washington, and them storming the airports and not being able to take control of the airports in 1777. I'm just saying. She did the job, though. Antonia, this is one of the best segments that I've seen on a MSNBC or in traditional media, where as a journalist and a younger journalist, but she went old school like Cronkite, old school like Brokaw, where she broke it down. You're adding an indoctrination program, and you are saying that you're calling other people indoctrinators, but you're doing indoctrination here, and you're only allowing people to participate or teach or receive education from what you approve as long as it agrees with your worldview. So here's his answer to the best question. Eamon Moadine's earlier second, but here's his response, which tells you a lot about the thinking of a duly elected official and how he thinks about his non-MAGA parents and voters. Okay, so this is where you interject. Now, Charles Coleman's about to interject, but I would have interjected sooner because one, he's going again to the lie that PragerU and the MAGA fascist dictatorship educational regime is based on fact, that it's normal, that it's perfectly okay. There's nothing wrong with this sort of approach. And that any educational approach, content, and structure that comes from non MAGA parents, teachers, administrators, state boards of ed, that is somehow based on emotion, it's illogical, it's not fact based, and it's indoctrination. He needed to have been checked right there. And then his conversation point about quote unquote Democrats or left infiltrating classrooms, once again, 75 million 17,613 Americans voted for Vice President Harris in 2024. In 2020, 82,268,914 voted for President Biden. We're not fucking infiltrating anything. We're Americans. That needs to be checked because it's a lie and it needs to be checked. There is no quote unquote left infiltration. There are Americans who don't agree with the MAGA fascist crap and who don't allow that to be in their educational curriculum or in their media ecosystems, which is their God given right to be able to do. The MAGA side is the one infiltrating through force the society, the aspects of life. That's who's doing the infiltration. Now, Charles Coleman responds next. I'm going to play this, and then I play a little bit of the representative's response, and yeah, Representative Woolley's response, and then I'll kind of wrap up in this segment. But it's telling that in us responding, we're going to have to be more forceful, clearer, and direct in how we respond. We can't wait, play games, and dance around. We have to go right at the heart of these lies and push back hard against these lies. So let me play this. Okay, once again, you interrupt the lie. So he's nice. Rep Woolley is nice and says you touched on points. He goes into a defense of book banning and immediately says that books that are being banned are sexual in nature. The overwhelming majority of books that are being banned around the country have no even reference to sex in them. They do have reference to things like the story of Ruby Bridges, who is a young girl who integrated schools and was a part of the integration effort of schools in the state of Arkansas. But that's been banned in some states because, well, there's not enough two sides to the MAGA side so that the white supremacists, MAGA folks, because that's who the MAGA folks were back then, they're portrayed as villains because they are. The Sith are villains. Emperor Palpatine is a villain. There is no two sides to Palpatine. He's a villain. You have to communicate the fact that he's a villain and respond in kind. This is where I take umbrage at times, both when I see debates in legislative bodies, in Congress, when I see them in other elected bodies, and when I see them in the media. We allow the MAGA folks to have a runway full with a live free zone where they can live without being challenged before somebody responds. And the responses could be better. That's what I'll kind of wrap up in my end. But, so he first goes to the lie that books that are being banned because they're all sexual in nature, which is a lie. But let's keep going. Okay. Oh, hold on. I'm sorry. Let me finish. Okay. This is where I really got offended and really got upset that we didn't jump in. And this is critical because here's the lies he said when he started talking to try to address Charles Coleman's proper response regarding race, slavery, and the effects of slavery that are still impacting the African American community to this day. He then wants to whitewash it by saying it's emotion versus logic, which is not. The MAGA perspective is the emotion, irrational, illogical perspective that's focused on making sure they don't have to confront tough questions, tough realities, or have to deal with things that the majority of their community have done in the past and still do to this day. Two, watch how he snuck in trying to go into gender identity. Look, let's be real. That's not an issue. That is not an issue. We don't need to give them credibility that that is somehow an issue. A parent and their children and what their children are and how their children live and how those parents love them is the parent and the children's ability to manage. It's not for Rep Wooley to control and tell a parent how they should raise and love their child or accept the uniqueness of their child. That is how we respond to when they start talking about gender, respond that when it comes to parents and their children, how they choose to love their children and how their children choose to be and how they choose to let their children be is up to them. And I'm not going to step in the middle of it, but I damn sure ain't going to let you step in the middle of what happens with that parent and that family because you don't have the right to impose your fascist will over that parent. That's not freedom, that's dictatorship. Freedom is that parent can love their kids as their kids are. And as a parent is supposed to love. That's how you respond. Clear, direct, we're going to let parents love their kids, raise their kids, and accept their kids as they are as they grow through life. And we're not going to let you interfere with how parents raise and love their children. That is a line you will not cross, channeling your inner Gandalf. You shall not pass. But then he talks about division. Earlier, he talked about Democrats, left, called us infiltrators, called us indoctrinators, talked about us in a nice way, but in very hostile, divisive terms. But then he wants to say that we're trying to cause division. If you come into my house and you tell me that I'm a no good, dirty, low down, evil dog, I'm not going to want to be friends with you. You can't then expect me when I say, get the hell out my house, you effing a hole, that then you want to say, I'm causing division. That is another rhetorical part of the MAGA lie and the MAGA bullshit that we have to respond to and that we have to interweave within our responses every day, all day, like breathing when it comes to this, because they are causing division because of their hate, their insecurities, and whatever else is driving them. But after they've called you everything but a child of God, when you respond and say, I'm going to respond, even if you respond nicely, I'm going to boycott you. I'm going to not vote for you. I'm going to oppose your ideas or your policies. I'm going to debate against them. Then they flip and say, you're trying to cause division because you're not letting me call you all of these horrible things and agreeing with me. No, we don't want to spare the division. Have you seen the orange terrorist leader who sits in the White House right now? Have you seen Ryan Walters and Kevin Stitt in Oklahoma? Have you seen Ron DeSantis? Have you seen the MAGA governors who are sending their National Guard to participate in a military takeover of a majority non-MAGA American city because they don't want that majority non-MAGA American city to have the freedom that they should have? You are the one, Rep Woolley, who is promoting division. You are the one and your team who's promoting hate, who's promoting dictatorship, who's promoting cancel culture, who's promoting the termination of free speech. It is all you, all your side. You need to find your inner George Costanza and just admit it is y'all. It ain't us. It's never been us. It's always been you all. And so, he talks a little bit more about the fact that he wants teachers to come to the state, and if they're going to participate in education, they need to adhere to what Oklahoma wants. And then he goes into the lie about because Oklahoma's majority voted for Trump, over 30% still didn't vote for Trump in the state of Oklahoma, that somehow that then gives them 100% control to force on all 100%, including the 30 plus percent who didn't vote for this, that you have no choice but to be under this dictatorship control. So, like I said, we're in a constant battle on multiple fronts, and there is no ability to just specialize in one area. You have to be multi versed in your approach, and you have to respond in different ways to different things. There are, as we have and build a big ecosystem, there are places where you can have some specialists, but for the most part, most entities have to be able to be ambidextrous in the response. Got to be able to use your left and your right hand, your left brain and your right brain. You've got to be able to respond with all of the characteristics of responding and fighting back against this. There is no other way. We're not in a place where we can say, okay, I'm going to not fight in area A, but I'll fight in area B. No, you got to fight in area A, in area B, in area C. This is just what you have to do. You don't have a choice here. So, like I said, guys, this is why we have the Super PAC, the future today and tomorrow, because we need your help. I know I asked you to visit the website, go to the donate page. There's a donate page on the homepage, www.futurepac.today. But we need dollars to be able to put advertising out, to be able to support through running separate campaigns in support of candidates or ballot initiatives or issues to push back against this. because an America that works is an America that says no to the indoctrination and the dictatorship dreams of this minority movement. We can do all of this economically, politically, legally, judicially, emotionally, spiritually, and logically. But it takes investment to do that. It takes helping and working with people and entities who have that ability to play in all of the different lanes that's necessary to make sure we're properly prepared for this fight and that we don't have any inability to respond effectively and correctly. So please, once again, visit www.futurepack.today. We have a lot of road in front of us. 2025 is important. We have to start with, and this ties into our Changemaker initiative, but it also ties into the general focus of what we're trying to do. We have to start taking back the space of compassion, humanity, multicultural, multiracial, multi-love America, starting with Virginia and New Jersey this year. State elections there. We cannot let the governorship and the lieutenant governor and the attorney general and the state assembly go to MAGA. Those have to go back to Democrats because those are the people right now who are the people fighting for everybody. And then separately, we're going to have situation where we in New Jersey make sure that we keep a Democratic governor and make sure that make sure that we don't have any situation where we are, in a nutshell, allowing ourselves to lose control of what can happen in 2026 because this guy is very clear that he is and wants to rig elections so that his party never has to lose. And so the lie that those of you who voted for Vice President Harris, who voted for the members of Congress, who voted for Senator Slotkin here in my home state in Michigan, voted for Governor Stein in North Carolina, voted for Senator Baldwin and Senator Gallego and Senator Cortez Masto in, was it Masto or Rosen? I think it was Rosen, in Nevada and in Arizona and in Wisconsin. He believes that his people believes that all of our election victories are illegitimate. We can't function as if we're fighting a battle of equals. We're fighting a battle with, we're in the horror movie, and his side is Freddie, Michael, and Jason. And you never could negotiate with Freddie, Michael, or Jason. You ever see anybody in the movies that tried to say, do you have to do this? Why are you doing this? And they ended up getting killed like 2 minutes later because you can't negotiate with them. It's win or lose. That's all it is. But we have to win for the betterment of this country. We're committed to that here at our Super PAC. I'm committed to that as being a part, being a father, being an American, being somebody who gives a damn. So please support us so we can support our country, our citizens, our family, our friends, our God, and just being and doing the right thing. So this is Eric Foster from Common Sense by Eric Foster. Catch me on Substack, on YouTube, and on Medium, and on other platform channels, including LinkedIn and others. So thanks again. Goodbye.